The Objective News Network, Nord Stream sabotage, right or wrong? Hello, this is John Hnatio reporting for the Objective News Network. Last time we talked about the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines 1 and 2 off the shores of Bornholm Island in the Baltic Sea. The Nord Stream pipelines transported significant amounts of Russian gas across Europe. We looked at the possible culprits and made a reasonable case that it could have been a U.S. covert operation. We found that the U.S. had the means, access, and the motivation to blow up the pipelines, but we came up with no conclusive evidence. This time, we are going to suppose that the United States was the culprit to ask ourselves the important question: if we did do it, were we justified? First, if the sabotage were discovered, it could be considered as an act of war, in this case, an act of war against the Russian Federation. The Russians may not be the most able adversary, as their performance in the Ukraine shows, but they do possess nuclear weapons and are aligned with the People's Republic of China, a larger and much more capable adversary. What this means in geopolitical terms: sabotaging of the Nord Stream pipelines by whoever did it was a highly risky thing to do. So risky, in fact, that it could represent the tinder that could spark World War III. As we do the post-mortem on Seymour Hersh's story of U.S. responsibility, we must consider who knew what and when of the situation. Did President Biden act unilaterally in cahoots with the U.S. intelligence community and the Department of Defense? Did the president confer with the foreign relations committees and intelligence committees of the Congress? Critical questions that must be answered. Did the White House coordinate the attack with NATO members? If so, who? Did it include Germany, a multi-billion-dollar investor in building the Nord Stream pipelines? Okay. Assuming that things were coordinated and calculated in a way to at least try and avoid World War III, we know that the energy dependence of Europe on Russia could have severely impacted the future ability of the United States to influence the Europeans. Not only are the winters in Europe cold, but you also need energy to drive healthy economies. Then we need to consider the war in Ukraine as a possible moral justification to blow up the Nord Stream pipelines. If the war in Ukraine is a war of aggression by Russia, how could the sabotage of the pipelines help Ukraine? It would most certainly drive the Europeans in the direction of having to purchase Western-supplied liquid natural gas to make up for the loss of Russian gas. But what's the direct benefit to Ukraine? Perhaps greater Russian isolation from the world community? Or was it something much bigger at play? Was the possibility of Russian energy dominance in Europe seen by the United States as an attack on its future position as a superpower? Based on President Biden's vehement words to destroy the pipeline, this makes a great deal of sense. In the president's own words, if Russia invades, there will no longer be a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it. Now it is time to ask ourselves what all of this could mean in the terms of extended order effects. Certainly, a loud signal has been sent to Russia that European dependence on their energy supplies is no guarantee of subservience. It also signals that the US and NATO are more deeply aligned with Ukraine than Russia likely expected at the time they invaded their neighbor. But from Russia's perspective, the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines is just another sequential step toward the NATOization of Ukraine, Finland, and Sweden. At what point Russian President Vladimir Putin decides that the war in Ukraine has devolved to represent an existential threat to Russia is when we can all expect him to use his arsenal of tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine. What then, Mr. President? That's the way it is for February 17, 2023. This is John Hnatio reporting for the Objective News Network. At ONN, we are here to look at all sides of the news stories of the day. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you the next time.